This will be my pitch for the transmedia assessment on the group project, and my idea is called Survive the Genre. Work in progress title, but we can look at that. Okay, so what I'm planning to do is I want to make a template video of a trailer for like film criticism, and then once I have that, I'm going to shape it into 3 separate film trailer genres with their own stories, which are horror, blockbuster, and comedy. Once I have those set up, I will take those 3 trailers and morph them into their own choose your own adventure style story, which will then be sold by the people that look at them. The choose your own adventure thing in particular I thought would be a good choice because it feels very much in line with a transmedia's method in that it's creating your own stories through a familiar format, and I feel like not only would that fit very well into transmedia itself, but film trailers in general, I don't think that's been touched upon, at least an avenue in which that can be explored, so I think that would be a pretty fun way to do it. And yeah. How is it transmedia? A trailer itself, I feel like, has a very specific feel to it that almost feels like its own story outside of just the movie it's advertising. Sometimes it can be very different from the product it's advertising, so that alone gives it its own atmosphere. So I think that kind of not only connects back to it being its own transmedia, but also can transform into other stories, which I want to elaborate on, like how can a story from a trailer be shown and stuff. There was a study that I found that showed the strengths and the influence that a trailer can have and just how much it affects people's feel of a movie, so I felt that was a pretty good example of it. And genre in itself, genre can be explored in a very fun way, and that there's various different ways that it can connect to various different movies. There can be mixing of genres, and I feel like just highlighting a genre itself can often make a movie different just by changing its style. Right, the core themes. The moldability of a trailer, just how transmedia can be taken in various different forms through various different methods, and showing it through a trailer would be kind of fun. Telling different stories through different mediums is always pretty fun, and a trailer, or at least that kind of avenue, is different, and having it in the choose your own adventure style from a trailer I thought would be a nice change of pace from the games and stuff. And of course genres and stuff, the moldability of them as already mentioned. Two examples of this story from a trailer idea that I wanted to highlight was Scary Mary and The Shining recut, 2 trailers on YouTube that change up movies Mary Poppins and The Shining into different genres. Mary Poppins is made into a horror, and The Shining is made into a comedy. These ones are a lot of fun because they're taking these very familiar movies and changing them completely just from how the trailers are shown, but nothing is really changed about the footage itself. Like the actual pieces of the movie are still the same, even like the words are still exactly the same, and yet just the way it's phrased makes it feel so much more different. So that alone was one of the reasons I wanted to pull up on this idea. Alright, and so the other example that I found in regards to the choose your own adventure style that I figured would connect is AI Dungeon. It's a virtual online adventure game which uses AI to generate unlimited content for the players to live out their own stories in the most bizarre and open ways possible. It calls back to that very D&D style of playing, I assume, where it's like taking the board game and you're allowed to mold your own story through just imagining whatever you want, and I think that alone itself is a pretty good incentive as to what I'm trying to go for with a film, in that taking something that we're all familiar with and just going fun with it, or at least having to be familiar with certain themes in order to succeed. Alright, this will be my proof of concept for the moldable trailer that I created.
What's the first thing that pops into your head when you hear film critic? No doubt it's an individual that's viewed as pompous, a stick in the mud, a ruiner of fun, someone whose sole purpose is to crush any positive thoughts on films that we love and thinks very highly of themselves because of it. But critiquing film doesn't have to all be about belittling people. Discussing films in a mature, sensible, and well thought out way can be engaging, creative, and overall fun. We all have opinions and would likely have plenty to talk about with our favorites, or at least some of our favorite movies. And with the internet basically being adopted into a necessity for humanity, it's easier than ever to deliver something online and share it with thousands of people. But there's always one hurdle that people have to face. They see the internet's dark side.
You guys are the ones that ruin! You got it ruined! Leave Billy alone!
I can't go away! What will I do?
Now.
It never usually ends well. That alone has left a bad taste in the mouth of many passionate people who want to express their thoughts, but think they'll become another screamer.
But what if I told you there was a way of being a part of the internet without joining its dark side? What if on newspapers there was actual useful information in there? What if when people actually read blog posts about information and such, it didn't put them to sleep? What if there was actually a review site for films that not only had plenty of quality, but also ones that had a share of positive and negative feedback involved? What if film criticism could be handled right?
So now I'm going to pose and solve the problem. How do you become a real film critic? No negativity attached.
Alright, that was the one I created. Yeah, I at least feel like that's a good starting point, or at least my quality starting point. Alright, so the three styles that I'll be using: horror, comedy, and blockbuster. Horror is pretty self-explanatory. It's the one where you could have the most fun with it, I'd assume. Like, those tropes are pretty familiar and would be pretty fun to navigate through just to survive the story, I would say. Comedy would be the most tricky one because that one is more subjective, and the idea of comedy would have to be much more wide open because there's a lot of different ways of doing comedy, so the story would be a bit harder to do. And blockbuster itself, blockbuster is also one that's pretty flexible, as in like any type of genre can be a comedy. Any type of genre could be a blockbuster. Honestly, it just depends on what is successful at the time. But still, the trailer ideas are still there. Yeah. For a group effort, I feel like this one would need a group because this one has a lot of stuff that would need to be done. There would need to be someone who would be able to go back and retake the trailer that I've made and mold it into three different styles. There would have to be someone who would have to create their own storylines through each of these three genres. There would have to be someone to make the website where all this would take place, or at least a place, or at least the area where this would take place. And yeah, but I feel like with at least 4 or 5 people, it can be done. And these are just the photos that I've used for my video and such.